This is Reality Dispatch, written by Jim Mintz.
I had lunch with Jean every Thursday at noon. It was more out of a force of habit rather than a genuine desire to converse. She could be really mean when she put her mind to it. Today she put her mind to it. "And how is that daughter of yours?" she asked. "Lisa? Yeah, she's good. Still working at the firm," I said. "Oh, she's much too good for that place," Jean said between bites of prawn cocktail. "Here it comes," I thought. Although, after what happened, she's lucky to have been given the opportunity. She left that last sentence hanging in the air, waiting for me to accept the invitation and agree with her assessment. "Don't you agree?" she asked. I shook my head, as if I didn't understand what she was referring to. "You know, with the..." She lowered her voice and looked over her shoulder. "The drugs and the bad boyfriend." There it was, never missing an opportunity to drag me down, reminding me of her status in the artificial pyramid she had built for our friendship. Yes, she was very lucky. "Lucky?" Jean chuckled. "That's one way of putting it." I put my knife and fork down, my first act of defiance against her in 53 years. Was I really doing this? "Look, Jean, I'm not entirely comfortable with the judgment you constantly give to my children," I said. My heart was pounding a mile a minute, but there was no going back now. Might as well finish the thought since I've come this far. "My daughter has worked her arse off in that role, and she has progressed to be second in charge of the office administration team, and sometimes when the manager is away, she is placed in the acting manager's role. She has gotten there through grit and determination, and I am proud of her, and I don't want to hear any more of a bad word said about her," I blurted out. I watched as Jean buried her eyes into the fractal details of her meal and the bubbles emanating from her champagne flute. She lifted the glass for a sip. "I didn't mean anything by it," she said as she took a sip. The rest of the meal was an exercise in awkward pain, an agony that only prolonged silence can bring. We sat there between chews of meat for what felt like an eternity. In reality, it was probably a minute or two. "Well, I really ought to be going," she said abruptly. She stood from her seat, put her handbag in her arms, and opened it to extract money. I did not stand. "I've got it," I said in between bites. She stood there contemplating what message to leave on, then thought better of it, and exited the restaurant. 38 years of friendship boiled over into one call-out that ended everything. I felt awful when I arrived home. I sat in the car in the driveway listening to the silence of the street, broken by the occasional car engine revving past the house. Nothing moved me from my daydream. The thrill of the confrontation had brought with it an influx of adrenaline, and now that it had passed, I felt flat, a malaise that covered me like a blanket. I pulled the phone out of my handbag and began to call her number. I listened as the dial tone rang out. I opened the messages, knowing that Jean would see a missed call from me, and I didn't want it to be without context. I began to type, "John, I am sorry about what happened between us at lunch. I was out of line. Could you please call me when you get this?" I sent it off and regretted the line about being out of line. I wasn't out of line. I had had enough of the judgment she had habitually employed, but I knew better than to put a friendship at risk. Not because I needed Jean in my life, but because I didn't need the nightmare of Jean's animosity. She held a spoke in the pecking order of my social circle. She had always held it. I knew where my bread was buttered, and I risked social alienation due to my outburst. It was worth it for that brief moment I got to put that you-know-what in her place. Kevin came out of the front door and approached the car. He had come home from work early, and I didn't notice he didn't have his work car. "What have you done?" he asked as he approached. I turned the engine off and opened the door to hear him clearly. "What have you done?" he asked again. "What do you mean?" I said. "I just got off the phone with Doug McRiordan. He said Jean was in tears and it was all your fault," he said in an accusatory tone. "What?" was all I could muster. "Not only that, He sent some thugs to the worksite in Cambervale, and they took off with my ute. He told me I could get it back in one piece if you apologized to Jean before the end of the day. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I didn't expect the interference of the husbands in my personal affairs with my high school friends. Why would he get involved like this? I told you not to be friends with Jean McRiordan, Gwen. Her husband is a maniac. He runs the chop shops and the tobacconists up and down Mission County. That means he runs organized crime. Jesus, I thought you knew all of this, Kevin screamed. I was worried about what the neighbors would think. How would I have known all of that? I said. I got out of the car and closed the door. I walked past him with my bag under my arm. I wanted to get out of the street, away from prying eyes and ears. Where are you going? He said. Get back in the car. I'm taking you to see her, he demanded. He had never spoken to me like that before. I gave him the eye that usually did the trick when he was out of line. He strolled over to me and whispered, a fraction away from my face. The look wasn't working. The McRiordans are not people I want anything to do with, he whispered. But I'd rather they also not be our enemies. They are capable of things, Gwen. Things you wouldn't understand, he said. Oh, please, I can understand, I said. I don't think we should have to live our lives in fear of bullies. I genuinely believed that. You would agree that we should live our lives at all, he said, and not be dead in a barrel thrown out by the side of a ditch. Give me a break, I said. He looked at me with fear and a sense of pleading. I almost didn't recognize him. I got in the car and allowed him to drive me to the McRiordans, where I would make the apology. A foreman on the tunnel project that ran from East York to Kempseyville was the union delegate and work safety officer. He would regularly hold stop work meetings when he believed the workers' safety was at risk. That project took twice as long as expected due to the union interference regarding safety concerns, Kevin explained on the drive. I sat in silence. The company got in touch with Doug. The foreman hasn't been seen since, he said. That doesn't mean anything, I said. Well, that's what I and everyone else knows, Kevin replied. We didn't talk for the rest of the journey. I'm a 64-year-old woman being driven by her husband to make a groveling apology, or I'm an 11-year-old girl being driven by Daddy. I couldn't tell anymore. A fortnight later, I'm at lunch at Cecilia's on Dorchester Boulevard with Jean and our other high school friend, Maud Angelusis. We hadn't seen her in over 20 years. Danny, Gwen's son, had a bit of trouble with the law a few years back, didn't he, Gwen? Jean said to me as she relayed my family history to our mutual friend. That's right, I said with a nod of the head and a bent smile on my face. I placed the pasta in my mouth and bit down so hard I could hear my teeth grinding.
For more stories of fact-based fiction, head to jimmins.substack.com.